فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على رسول الله وآله الأطهار على رسول الله وآله الأطهار صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Thank you all for attending today. Inshallah, we're going to be having an iftar program. The schedule is going to be as follows. First, we're going to have, inshallah, a lecture by Sheikh Khani, followed by salat, and then iftar. And then afterwards, we're going to do dua, tawassul, and iftitah, which is followed by a discussion circle. Inshallah, we can benefit from the Sheikh tonight. Today, we're honored to have with us, as I mentioned, Sheikh Khani from Denmark. He has been a student of the Islamic Seminary for over 10 years and still is studying at the Amir al-Mu'mineen Hawza in Qom. He is the local Imam at Imam Ali Mosque in Copenhagen. Please welcome him with a loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين سيما الحجاج بقية الله الأعظم روحي وأرواحنا له فداء ولعن دائم على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So just a reminder to myself before anybody else, today's topic is a bit sensitive, so if it's possible, our mindset, our mental mindset basically, and mental attitude when it comes to this topic should be that nobody exists in this world except for myself. So every hadith that we hear, every verse from the Holy Quran that we hear, if you think of different situations where you think that maybe there was this person who showed this behavior or that behavior, think about yourself first and foremost. Focus on yourself, don't focus on anybody else. Because it is a sensitive topic, and the examples that are being given, sometimes we think of examples from our own lives. So if you want to think of an example or a situation, think of a situation where you showed that behavior yourself and not somebody else. Like, don't focus on other people, only focus on ourselves. And that's a reminder to myself before anybody else. Because respected brothers and sisters, tonight's topic is going to be a topic about a spiritual disease. It's a spiritual disease that is so bad and so severe that it works like an acid bath. You know what an acid bath does? It dissolves all the virtues that you have. It prevents all the virtues from flourishing and prevents you from realizing your own potential. This spiritual disease. And it's such a bad spiritual disease and so destructive that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions it as being the worst spiritual disease in the Holy Quran as well. So Shaykh, why is it that we should focus on negative things like spiritual diseases? Why can't we focus on like how to see closest to Allah? Amir al-Mu'mineen gave us the answer. He said, in fact, because this spiritual disease prevents all the potential to flourish, in fact, that if you deal with that disease, the virtues in itself will show itself. Why? Because human beings, they were created in such way that we have the potential, and we can realize that potential if we just remove the barriers that exist in order to grow or self-development. And what is that? That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen in a narration, he says, اجتناب السيئات أولى من اكتساب الحسنات. That we refrain from sins, أولى من اكتساب الحسنات, is more important or hold a higher priority than doing what? Than seeking rewards. Because if you understand that spiritual diseases works as a barrier and an acid bath for all the virtues in life, then you understand you will take care of those diseases first and focus on those diseases first. Then afterwards you will be what? You will seek towards the rewards of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the blessings of Allah. And why is that? Because the prophets, they weren't sent to add something to the existence of human beings. In fact, we have everything. Allah, He created us fi ahsani taqweem. Allah, He created us with everything. We have the potential. The prophets were there to show us the path so we can realize this potential that He created us with, that Allah, He created us with. We just need to deal with these spiritual diseases. So what is this spiritual disease, brothers and sisters, and where does it stem from? I'll tell you where it originates from, and then I'll mention the disease itself. Human beings, we have a desire, and we seek something called greatness. Human beings, we seek something which is called greatness. And depending on how old we are, we seek it on different levels. So a human being, for example, likes to be acknowledged, likes to be loved. That's something which is general for all human beings. And we like to utilize technology and tools in order to be superior to our own surroundings. And that all stems from this fact that we have a desire for greatness. That all human beings have a desire for greatness. So that desire for greatness is not a bad thing in itself. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest. It is the desire for greatness that leads us towards what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the desire in itself is a very positive thing. Just like your thirst is not a bad thing, but how you quench it makes a difference. You can quench your thirst with poison, but that doesn't mean that the need itself is a bad thing, right? But still, you hurt yourself if you try to quench your thirst with poison. The same applies to what? This desire as well. The desire for greatness and the need for greatness is not a bad thing. In fact, that's exactly what leads us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The desire for greatness is what leads us towards individuals that we know they are means to obtain that greatness. Like Prophets alayhi wasalam, like Imams alayhi wasalam. Why is it that we love Ali ibn Abi Talib? Because our love for Ali is love for greatness. We love the greatness of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Or else there's a lot of people around the world that is called Ali. It's not the name in itself. It's the personality of Ali alayhi salam. So when we understand that we have this desire, so where does the spiritual disease stem from? Because sometimes when we want to satisfy this desire, brothers and sisters, we do something wrong. And because we satisfy this need in its wrong way, it turns out to be a spiritual disease, or it's going to end up in a spiritual disease. How? Sometimes in our pursuit for desire, for greatness, you know what we do? Sometimes we hasten a bit. We're a bit hurried. We hasten ourselves when it comes to what? Seeking desire, seeking this desire, seeking this greatness. Sometimes we choose the wrong path and we point out certain things to be something which should be means for greatness, but they aren't. And no, sometimes we just wrongfully assume that we obtain greatness, that we are great individuals. And when we do that, it leads to this spiritual disease, which is the most destructive one and works as an acid bath for all the virtues that a human being they have in their heart. And what is that? That's the spiritual disease that we in Arabic call takabbur, and in English call arrogance. Arrogance. So now when you understand where it originates from, because sometimes you know what we do? We have a superficial understanding of arrogance, and that's a very bad thing. If you ask a person what is arrogance, that you feel better than other individuals, that's it. He leaves it there. What are the root causes for this arrogance? If you want to solve the issue, you should know the root cause of this issue or this spiritual disease. Of course you should. And that goes back to what? Our desire for greatness and how we try to satisfy our desire for greatness. We do it in the wrong way. Instead of obtaining greatness through sujood, we think that a car is a mean of greatness. We think that car is a mean of greatness. Instead of being humble, we think that a title can lead us to greatness, for example, an education, a degree. Suddenly we point out these things to be means of greatness, and then we understand, no, in fact that leads to arrogance. Why? Because you try to satisfy a need in its wrong way. And that led to some spiritual diseases. Just like if you try to quench your thirst with something which is poisonous, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt yourself. Why? Because they were not created as means for you to quench your thirst. The same applies when it comes to your need and desire for greatness. If you try to quench the thirst for greatness in a wrong matter, in a wrong way, not in the right matter, you know what happens? You end up with spiritual diseases. And that's the worst type of disease, respected brothers and sisters. That's the disease that is called arrogance. And if we just get rid of that, it will solve a lot of issues. Hence, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, in a narration, he states, وَمَنْ بَرِيًا مِنَ الْكِبْرِ نَالَ الْكِرَامَةِ. Just the fact that you get rid of takabbur and arrogance, that itself will lead you toward karama, nobility. You'll be a noble person as an individual. You'll have dignity and you'll be a dignified person if you get rid of arrogance. Why it's important to get rid of these diseases? Because they work as a barrier for all the virtues and for us to realize our own potential. Allah, He created us with a potential. It's not like we should obtain it. Just get rid of the bad stuff and they will flourish themselves. If you try to plant a seed, for example, if you want to plant a flower, don't put a bucket above it. That's it. Leave it alone, give it some water and the sunlight, it will grow itself. You don't have to do anything. No magic is needed. The same applies to virtues, respected brothers and sisters. Just deal with these diseases and the rest will solve it. Will be solved. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, إِيَّاكَ وَالْكِبْرِ. Be aware of takabbur, be aware of arrogance. فَإِنَّهُ عَادَمَ الذُّنُوبَ وَأَلَمَ الْعُيُوبِ. Because it's among the worst sins, one of the biggest sins. مِنْ أَعْظَمَ الذُّنُوبِ. So respected brothers and sisters, according to the Prophet, the holy month of Ramadan is to what? Get rid of sins. That was the best action that you can perform is to abstain from sins in the holy month of Ramadan. So when Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he says that arrogance is one of the biggest types of sins, then we understand that what should our purpose of Ramadan be? Get rid of what? Arrogance. We should be focused on this spiritual disease, or else we can't benefit from this holy month. So, Shaykhna, does it apply to everyone? Yes. Nobody is exempted from this spiritual disease, and that's another point as well. You could be rich or you could be poor. Sometimes we have this perception that, oh, alhamdulillah, I'm not rich, so I'm not arrogant. Or in fact, you can be poor, and because of, I don't know, a shoelace or a mobile phone, you think that you're better than another person. That's it. That's how simple it is. And we see that in the history of Islam as well. Once there was a woman, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was riding with his companions. They came to Medina. This woman, she wouldn't move from the street. And they had a caravan coming. So this woman, she was standing in their way. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, well-mannered, of course, as the Prophet he went over to this woman and he asked her politely. He asked her, can you move a bit because the caravan is coming through? She said no, and she was disrespectful to the Prophet as well. Some of the companions, they were like, we're going to move her by force. The Prophet said, leave her. Leave her. Why? She's not going to be affected by it. You know why? She has kibr in her heart. And who was this woman? The poorest woman of Medina who was a slave herself. She had nothing, she owned nothing. So you can be the most poor person but still be an arrogant person. Don't think it's only rich people that are arrogant. At the same time, you could be ignorant and you can be arrogant at the same time. And being educated doesn't what? Leave you exempted from being arrogant either. Nobody is exempted, respected brothers and sisters, regardless if you're a man or woman, or child or grown up. Nobody, black or white, ethnicity, it doesn't discriminate. This spiritual disease affects everyone, and everybody is a danger zone. The first moment you think that you're exempted for being an arrogant person, that's the first step towards arrogance as well. The first moment where you think that you're exempted from being an arrogant person or you're not in the danger zone to become arrogant, that's where you're actually taking steps towards arrogance. Be careful. So nobody should see themselves as exempted. So how does arrogance affect us? How does arrogance affect us? So there's different ways that arrogance affects us, takabbur. The first thing that arrogance does, respected brothers and sisters, that it corrupts the intellect of a human being. The same tool that we should utilize in order to do what? To administrate all the information, to look at the outcome of our actions, to evaluate ourselves, how we deal with information, how we deal with other individuals. If we want to pursue the truth as well and understand the truth, we do that with our what? Our intellect. So when the arrogance corrupts that, you know what happens? You know what happens? Then the rest of the body will be corrupted as well. The heart and the soul will be corrupted as well. In other words, you're like a person who can't pursue the truth and you can't understand the information or work with the information that you actually get. You know what it's like? It's like an engine or a car. You pour fuel in that car, but the engine doesn't work. So how does the fuel benefit you? It can't benefit you. If the engine doesn't work of a car, you can pour as much as fuel as you want to into that car. It's not going to work. How is it going to benefit the car? You're not going to move. There'll be no movement. The same applies to a person who's arrogant. All the information that he gets is not going to benefit him. Why? His aql is corrupted. Which is a narration as well from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Look what he says. مَا دَخَلَ قَلْبَ أَحَدٍ شَيْءٌ مِنَ الْكِبْرِ إِلَّا نَقَصَ مِنْ عَقْلِهِ مِثْلَ مَا دَخَلَهُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. The same amount of arrogance that enters your heart, I'm paraphrasing the hadith here. The same amount of kibr and takabbur and arrogance that enters your heart, they say equal to that amount from your intellect would be naqasa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take away a part of your intellect, the same amount of the arrogance that enters your heart. They'll be equal. Imagine your own intellect, your intellect that is so important to understand, and then you're not going to benefit, you can't benefit from others either. How are you going to benefit from others if you're an arrogant person? How? Exactly. Arrogance is like a cloak that you put above your head that prevents any light and blocks out all light of the perspective of other individuals. Why we have a narration that says, and Imam Ali alayhi salam, لا يتعلم من يتكبر. A person who's mutakabbir or who practices arrogance, or he is a mutakabbir person, he can't learn from other people. How is he supposed to learn from other people when he thinks that he knows better than them? How? How? It's impossible. So that's the first thing, respected brothers and sisters. And we see that sometimes, unfortunately, from individuals that's supposed to be educated, but we see there's a lack of consistency in the way they live. You know why? That goes back to arrogance as well. Look at the disbelievers in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran tells us that they used as an argument against the Prophet? They say, قَالُوا إِنَّا مَا أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُنَا. You're human beings just like us. That's it. Why should we listen to a human being when we are human beings as well? What makes you different from us? They were arrogant. You know what they said afterwards? قَالُوا بَلْ نَتَّبِعُ مَا أَلْفَيْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا. We followed that which was discovered by our forefathers. Question, your forefathers, weren't they human beings? Look at the lack of consistency here. So the Prophet, they said, we're not going to follow you because you're a human being. And then afterwards they say that we follow our forefathers and what they discovered. They were human beings as well. Why are you following them then? Sometimes we see individuals, they have a lack of consistency when it comes to their lifestyle. And you know why? Because of what? Because of arrogance as well. You know, Abu Jahl, his name, what it was before the Prophet called him Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl means the father of ignorance. Abu Jahl, his name was Abu al-Hakam. You know that? The father of wisdom. Why? Because he was considered to be a very intelligent person in the society back then. Everybody understood him as being very intelligent and a well-read person. In other words, he would be well-educated according to the standards of today's society. He would be a well-educated person. Hence his name was Abu al-Hakam. They asked him, why are you not following the Prophet? Is it because he's a liar? He said, no. I called him Muhammad al-Amin. I know he's the trustworthy person. But should I follow a person who's not even from this tribe or like closely related to me and who's not amongst our forefathers? Should I follow this person? Look, he was arrogant. Hence the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he called him Abu Jahl. He was the father of ignorance. It wasn't that he didn't have any knowledge or any information, but he was ignorant because of what? His takabbur. So that's the first thing it does. Takabbur corrupts our intellect. We won't be able to use this intellect anymore then, unfortunately. So we should take care of this spiritual disease and purify our heart from it. How? Inshallah, we're going to explain that. The second thing that we would do, respected brothers and sisters, which is worse than the first one, is that we distance ourselves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we are mutakabbir. Listen to this hadith from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq where he explains about a hadith, a revelation that was revealed for Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. He says, Ya Dawood, kaman inna aqrab an-nas ila Allah al-mutawadi'un. The same way that the people that are closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the people that are humble, كَذَلِكَ أَبْعَدُ النَّاسِ مِنَ اللَّهِ الْمُتَكَبِّرِينَ. The same way the people that are furthest away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the people that are arrogant. We distance ourselves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we become mutakabbir. And respected brothers and sisters, we should be careful when it comes to arrogance, especially religious arrogance. You know why? Because it's dangerous. Sometimes it's so dangerous that you can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 6,000 years and you won't discover that your heart is filled with arrogance. And then when you get a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're going to be like, I'm not going to go to sujood for Adam. Just like shaitan. Just like shaitan. For 6,000 years he worshipped Allah. He didn't notice that his heart was filled with what? Arrogance. That's called religious arrogance. Don't think that shaitan, when he wants to make you arrogant, he comes to you and tells you, look, you have a nice car, you have a nice this, you have a nice that. Therefore, you should feel that you are better than another person. He's sneaky, he knows how to deal with people, right? He's seen how many thousands of prophets. He knows how to speak with religious people. He's not stupid. So when he comes to you, he's going to tell you, look, tonight you prayed Salatul Layl. Let me tell you something. There's a person in the room, he didn't do that. There's a person in the room, he didn't pray Salatul Layl like you did. In this month of Ramadan, you recited the whole Quran, mashallah. Yeah? How beautiful isn't that? But there's people in this room that didn't do that. You know? Slowly he starts to work on your arrogance. Then you see that religious arrogant, you think that you're better than other individuals. Why? Because some of their sins are apparent and your sins are hidden. They were committed like behind the veil and they are obvious about their sins. Then you think that you're better than them. In fact, Imam Rida alayhi salam, he says, "At-taqi is the one who looks at other individual and who could swear by Allah that he doesn't feel better than that person. That's a muttaqi, that's a pious person." Don't be careful, be careful. Shaitan, he has his ways. So the second thing that it does, we distance ourselves from Allah. So now today's topic, this is the part where it's actually related to our discussion today. All of it was just one big introduction to this part of this lecture. And what is that? How does it affect our relationship to other people? Other people, more specifically, our family members and members of our community. How does arrogance affect our relationship to our family members and members of our community? That's a question. Respected brothers and sisters, an arrogant person, the first thing that he would experience, you know what it is? A lack of empathy for others. He won't be compassionate with other people. And he won't understand other individuals as well. Now, tell me this, or answer this question. A person who has no empathy for others, no compassion for others, and has a lack of understanding of what they're saying, how is that person going to be able to establish or have a healthy relationship to other individuals? How? It is impossible. And you know what happens? That's even more dangerous. Instead of becoming creative in the ways that we can communicate, collaborate, and cooperate with family members and members of our community, a human being that is being arrogant, he becomes creative in ways to be evil. And that's the worst part of it. And we see that throughout history of humankind. That everywhere you saw that some sort of an arrogance emerged amongst human beings or in a society, they became creative in ways to be evil. Have you been to one of these museums where they show the different tools or different methods of torture? Then you understand how creative human beings they can be when it comes to being evil. Not the worst predator on earth could come up with such a machine to torture other animals. Why? Because if they attack other animals, it's because they even feel threatened, or it's because of their own survival. We don't have a third cause. It's either because they're feeling like they're being threatened, or it's because of survival. They want to live, therefore they eat other animals. But human beings, no, they could do it because of greed, they could do it because of arrogance, they could kill other people because of it. In other words, we become 100 times worse than the worst predator on earth. And that's exactly what happens when we become an arrogant individual. Why? Because we become creative in ways to be evil towards other people. You know what we do? Instead of building a community, we become creative in how we can destruct that community, destroy that community. And we do it subconsciously. Why? Because this spiritual disease is hidden. This spiritual disease that is called arrogance is so well hidden that we use different concepts and words to justify it as well. And that's the dangerous part, right? That's the dangerous part. So how can we solve that? And what's the solution to that? I'll mention two different solutions. The first one is about our perception about this concept and how to achieve greatness. The second is a practical solution, something that we can practice from tomorrow. But you should understand, it doesn't only affect our communities, but also our family life as well. Instead of looking for flaws all the time because we're arrogant, and we do that, we see that sometimes. Unfortunately, I sit in an office where a lot of people, they come with their marriage problems and so on and whatnot. And some of the people, if not 99% of everyone that had a divorce, that comes to me and get a divorce, You see, through their life or their marriage, one of them or both of them showed some sort of an arrogance. And they could actually solve that issue and their problem in that marriage instead of being divorced if they were if they were humble in that situation. If one of them was ready not to be an arrogant person, they would have solved their issue. There wouldn't be any issue. They could actually continue their marriage. But things escalated after that. It became a competition on which one of them that could be the most arrogant person, and they just ended up in a divorce. That's why you see Allama Tabatabai rahmatullah alayhi. Look at the beautiful part of his life, how humble of an individual he was. Allama Tabatabai, once he was asked about the reward of Tafsir al-Mizan. The reward of Tafsir al-Mizan. If anybody had the right to be an arrogant person, it would be a person like Allama Tabatabai. Because he knew that he was a great person. The whole society was telling him that he was a great person. Everybody knew that he was a great person. His family told him that he was a great person. So if anybody had the right, nobody has the right to be arrogant. But if anybody did have the right to be an arrogant person, it would be Allama Tabatabai. Look what he tells his wife. Look what he tells his wife. His wife, who hasn't studied, she's taking care of the family and the household from the beginning. She wasn't educated or anything. But he said, if I could change the reward of Tafsir al-Mizan for just one day where you've been the backbone of this family and you taking care of this household, I would do it without hesitating. And if you accept it, I'll make sure I change that reward. Because I know that just the fact that you've been the backbone of this family, just for one day, not your whole life, for one day, you'll receive more reward than I will receive from Tafsir al-Mizan. Allah, Tafsir al-Mizan, all Muslims are in debt to Allama Tabatabai rahmatullah alayhi. Not Shias, all Muslims are in debt to Allama Tabatabai because of Tafsir al-Mizan. And he said, one day of my wife being the backbone of this family, taking care of the household, I'm 100% sure, I'm certain that there's more reward in her action. This is a humble person, respected brothers and sisters. He understands that the whole world tells him that he's a great person, yet he doesn't see his greatness from himself. He understands that it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's true greatness. So what's the first solution? Change our perception on how we seek greatness. Understand that greatness is only achieved by the means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made effective. You cannot achieve greatness through means which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't made effective. That's like trying to quench your thirst by eating sand. It's not going to happen. You're probably going to end up hurting yourself. So if we try to seek greatness through a car, a house, a title, an education, a degree, while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to be humble, if we think that being aggressive when Allah wants us to forgive is going to give us some sort of a greatness, or that we're going to feel great, no, in fact it's the opposite. When it's time to be patient and you're being aggressive, it's going to end up in arrogance. If you want greatness, you should do it through the means which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made what? Effective. That's the first thing. Change your perception about greatness and how to achieve greatness. In fact, Allah says in a hadith al-Qudsi, if I'm not mistaken, who are the people that will achieve greatness? That's the humble people. We think it's the opposite. We think a title will make us great, right? Being a ruler, like these things that they're being promoted today in the society. What we consider to be success from a worldly perspective, we think that will cause some greatness, or that will give us some. Allah tells us it's the exact opposite. If you were to, for yourself and your own intellect, how will you come up with a solution like that? How would you understand that being humble in this situation, you will be a great person, or you will achieve greatness through that? You wouldn't. That's why it's a blessing when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given us these means, that we understand them as the only means to achieve greatness, and not try to achieve greatness with other methods and means that Allah hasn't made effective. That's the first thing. A practical solution, respected brothers and sisters, if you want your spouse or members of your community to be humble, then you should be the first one to accept the truth yourself. If you commit a mistake, admit it straight away. Don't wait. If somebody in the community says something, does something, and you look at it like, maybe he's right, admit it, acknowledge it straight away. Don't wait. Listen to what Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, وطلبت الخضوع فما وجدت إلا بقبول الحق. I looked for humility, but I didn't find it except in what? Accepting the truth. It's only when we accept the truth that we become humble as individuals. So if we want to, the members of our household to be humble individuals, we should understand that it starts with ourselves. When they tell us something, when we committed a mistake, be the first one to admit it as well. Be an example in practical terms, not just spill out like, yeah, you should be humble, you should do this, you should listen to me. You be the first one to accept the truth yourself. If a member of the community you said something about a member of the community and they come to you and tell you about some problems they caused themselves, be the first one to say, it was my mistake. Why? Because I caused this problem myself. I did this, I did that. You be the first one. You know what the beautiful part about it is? That virtues it's something that spreads faster than spiritual diseases as well. Humility or being a humble person itself, it inspires other people to be humble as well. Why? Instead of becoming a competition on who can be the most arrogant towards each other, it becomes a competition on who can be the most humble, who can sacrifice the most. And that's exactly what we are looking for. And that's exactly what we should try to achieve, inshallah ta'ala. So, respected brothers and sisters, in this holy month of Ramadan, the worst spiritual disease that we should focus on and get rid of, that's the spiritual disease that in Arabic is called takabbur, and in English is called arrogance. How? Change our perception on how to achieve greatness. Second practical step, accept the truth and acknowledge your mistakes as soon as you know that that's the truth. Then accept it. Don't postpone it, don't delay it. Don't be like, right now my nafs is not allowing me to say I'm sorry, so next week inshallah I'm going to buy a gift for her. No, that's not going to help. That's not going to help. That's just going to make things worse. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to get rid of this disease inshallah, so we can solve the issues and the problems and make sure that we realize the potential, we realize the own potential that Allah He created us with. So the virtues that can grow and we can build a healthy family and a healthy community. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you so much, Sheikh, for this amazing lecture. We are about to have a break before iftar, just to prepare wudu and so on. But we have two very special guests that we want to hear their beautiful voice. Can you come? Yeah, there you go. Tfaddal. You're going to recite for us a short surah from the Quran. Do you want to start? Okay, you start.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر كلا سوف تعلمون ثم كلا سوف تعلمون كلا لو تعلمون علم اليقين لترون الجحيم ثم لترونها عين اليقين ثم لتسألن يومئذ عن النعيم صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you so much, brother Amir and Siraj. Yes, thank you so much. Please feel free to go do wudu. We should be having iftar in about 5 minutes, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
ظبطها على القبلة بس رجال هدية